Well, welcome to our viewers in Nigeria and across the world. Lunchtime Politics begins right this minute. Well, it's Democracy Day in Nigeria. President Bola Tinubu assures Nigerians that their sacrifices will not be in vain, re-echoing the hope mantra which sold the winner of the annulled June 12 election, MKO Abiola, to Nigerians. Presidential candidates Mr. Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi released statements on Democracy Day. While Mr. Atiku describes Nigeria's democracy as one in bondage, Mr. Atiku's words, or Mr. Obi's words, says our democracy is troubled. And in the aftermath of demolitions by the new government in Kano State, we hear from the government's spokesperson. Well, it's Democracy Day in Nigeria. It marks the day the military handed over power to an elected civilian in 1999. That's, 24 years ago. It also marks the beginning of the longest continuous civilian rule since Nigeria's independence in 1960. Well, on June the 6th, 2018, that's 8 days after the usual May the 29th, which had been Democracy Day up until that time, the President Buhari-led federal government of Nigeria switched it and changed to June 12 to be Nigeria's Democracy Day. So there's still a lot of background to that, a lot of significance to that, which we'll get to in a moment. But as Nigeria marks Democracy Day today, President Bola Tinubu has been paying tribute to the heroes of the nation's democracy whose sacrifices, he says, laid the foundation for the country's uninterrupted democracy in the last 24 years. Speaking in his first broadcast to the nation since he assumed office, President Tinubu explains that every June the 12th is a reminder of the roles played by this group of Nigerians that set the country on its current path. Take a listen.
We celebrate a day that has remained a watershed in our nation's history, not just today, but for every June 12th, for the endless future that our beloved country shall exist and work stronger and stronger. Generation of Nigerians will always remember themselves that the democracy that is steadily going to become the defining essence of our polity was not gifted to us on a silver platter. We can easily recall the sacrifice and the martyrdom of Chief MKO Abiola, the custodian of the sacred mandate that was so cruelly annulled. Every day on this day, down the ages, we will recall the several heroes of democracy, such as Kudirat Abiola, wife of Chief Abiola, who was brutally murdered while in the trenches fighting on the side of the people. We remember Pat Al-Fedrewani, one of the heroes of our independence struggle, and Major General Shehu Musa Yar'Adua, retired, who was silenced by the military junta while in pursuit of democracy.
Well, President Tinubu also used the occasion to speak on the election that brought him into office. He says while the winners are celebrating their victory, or those who are not satisfied with the outcome should not despair, since in politics, there's always another day.
It is only natural that even as those who won and experienced victory in various elections are elated and fulfilled. Those who lost are disenchanted and disappointed. But the beauty of democracy is that those who win today can lose tomorrow, and those who lose today will have an opportunity to compete and win in the next rounds of elections. Those who cannot endure and accept the pains of defeat in elections do not deserve the joy of victory when it is their turn to triumph. Above all, those who disagree with the outcome of the elections are taking full advantage of the constitutional provisions to seek redress in court. That is one of the reasons why democracy is the best form of government invented by man.
Following the outcry that has greeted his Inauguration Day speech on the removal of fuel subsidy, the president admits that the decision will impose extra burden on the masses. He, however, assures that their sacrifice will not be in vain.
I admit the decision will impose extra burden on the masses of our people. I feel your pain. This is one decision we must bear to save our country from going under and take our resources away from the stranglehold of a few unpatriotic elements. Painfully, I have asked you, my compatriots, to sacrifice a little more for the survival of our country. For your trust and belief in us, I assure you that your sacrifice shall not be in vain. The government I lead will repay you through massive investment in transportation, infrastructure, education, regular power supply, healthcare, and other public utilities that will improve the quality of lives.
Well, the president is also charging all that have been elected into various offices to see their election as a sacred trust from Nigerians and one they must be ready to defend vigorously.
I enjoy all of us, to rededicate ourselves to strengthening this form of government of free people that has been our guiding light these past 24 years. In particular, those of us who have been privileged to elect into public office at various levels in both the executive and legislative arms of government must recommit ourselves to offering selfless service to the people and delivering concrete democracy dividend in accordance with our electoral promises. On my part and that of my administration, I pledge anew our commitment to diligently fulfilling every component of our electoral pact with the people, the Renew Hope agenda. We shall be faithful to truth, faithful to equity, and faithful to justice. We shall exercise our authority and mandate to govern with fairness, respect for the rule of law, and commitment to always upholding the dignity of all our people.
Well, according to the president, the recent harmonization of the retirement age for judicial officers is meant to strengthen the rule of law while assuring that more reforms will follow in the judiciary. He's also quick to add that unnecessary illegal orders used to truncate or abridge democracy in the past will no longer be tolerated. Now, after that nationwide broadcast by the president, he was received by the quarter guard before his entrance into the forecourt of the presidential villa. where he inspected a military parade as part of activities marking the 2023 Democracy Day. Among dignitaries present are the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Femi Gbajabiamila, Service Chiefs, former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babagana Kingibe, Governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and his colleague from Zamfara, as well as the President of the 9th Senate, Speaker of the 9th House of Representatives as well, who is now the close man to the President as the Chief of Staff, as well as the Chairman of the APC National Secretary, the Head of Service, amongst others. Well, staying with the Democracy Day celebration, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, is calling for a reflection on democracy by all Nigerians. Well, in a statement which he personally signed, the former Vice President of Nigeria notes that democracy without a corresponding commitment to the principles of fairness and fidelity to the role of play by stakeholders in conducting elections still leaves the people prostrate to dictatorship tendencies. He adds that for our democracy to be fully fledged, it must constantly evolve away from the current practice where the governing elite determines the outcome of elections. He ends by saying democracy in Nigeria remains in bondage and it will need the energy of all of us to rescue it. And for the presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 general elections, Mr. Peter Obi, he has wished the people of Nigeria a happy Democracy Day, but he deplores the current state of democracy in the country. A part of a statement released on his Twitter account reads, "Our democracy is deeply troubled and our nation's destiny remains uncertain." He advocates for an electoral system that can be trusted to ensure fairness and justice in elections, and also urges all Nigerians to use the commemoration of June 12 as an occasion to return to the true virtues of a truly democratic nation. Well, let's head over to Ogun State now, which is the home state of late business mogul and the acclaimed winner of June 12 election in 1993, Moshood Abiola, where special prayers have been held at his family house in Abeokuta, the state capital. The event was attended by members of his extended family, the state deputy governor, Noimot Salakowe-Dele, who represented the governor, Dapo Abiodun, as well as League of Imams and Alfas and government functionaries, and seized the occasion to promise good governance, accountability, and provision of critical infrastructure for socio-economic development of the state.
We sincerely appreciate and acknowledge the government, starting from, the previous government, the Buhari government till date. And of course, you would also acknowledge that, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is currently the president, said that, Democracy Day would always continue to be a day that would never be forgotten in the history of our country. Why? Because of the sacrifice of our father, late Chief MK Abiola, who laid down his life for us to be able to appreciate, and to be able to have a day like this as, a worthy celebration nationwide. And we hope that, subsequently, the government would continue, to ensure that, this day, stays in the lives and memories of every Nigerian.
Well, let's get more on Democracy Day. We're now joined on the program by an Associate Professor, Institute of African and Diaspora Studies, University of Lagos, Dr. Kayode Eshola. He joins us on the program. Thank you for joining us on Lunchtime Politics.
Thank you very much. Happy Democracy Day.
Well, that's the usual practice in Nigeria, but I'd like to get your thoughts, because we began with the historical look at Democracy Day in Nigeria. For the benefit of a lot of people, some of them who are new voters who just voted in this election, what would you say is the single most significant thing about June 12 and by extension Democracy Day and democracy in Nigeria?
June 12 itself signifies democracy, and that we have come to accept in Nigeria. But the current June 12 that we are celebrating, June 12, 2023, is unique because the beneficiary of the presidency of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as we speak, Alhaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is one of those who fought tooth and nail for restoration of democracy in Nigeria. He was a member of NIDECO, and he was instrumental to the agitation that ultimately checkmated and maybe sent away military government in Nigeria. And so for me, this is significant that somebody who fought against a system that brought another system is now a beneficiary of that system. That for me is the unique point. That's what the youngsters who are voting for the first time should know. And of course, this also is a burden. Those who did not participate in anti-military movement could as well come to the democratic platform and do what they want to do without anybody appealing to their conscience. But for someone like Tinubu, who was part of the struggle, he has a moral burden, he has a constitutional burden, and political burden, if you choose, to ensure that he runs the Federal Republic of Nigeria extremely democratic.
Well, Dr. Eshola, there's this crackle that keeps coming in as we try to listen to you. Very important points that you were making about Democracy Day, but we'll need to fix that, perhaps have this conversation another time, because we can't get the full value of the conversation. But we'd like to thank you, Dr. Kayode Eshola, who is an Associate Professor, Institute of African and Diaspora Studies, UNILAG. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure we'll have this conversation in a much better atmosphere in the coming days. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
We'll take a break now. We sincerely apologize for that audio crackle, but we'll go on a break. And when we return, we'll take you to Kano State, where there's been that back and forth between the current government and the previous government. We'll tell you more about that. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Well, the impasse in Kano State came to a head just over the weekend, where a former governor of a state who had visited the presidential villa made statements about his predecessor, about the possibility of slapping him if he had met him at the presidential villa. And the backstory is what you're seeing here, the demolition of buildings in Kano State just days after the NNPP-led government came into power. This has gotten a lot of Nigerians talking, especially what is going on, what happens to the businesses that have been hit by this demolition. As you see there, lots of devastation. But let's get more insight into this. Let's hear from the government of Kano State, just barely 2 weeks in government, and we're joined on the program for an insight, a backstory to this, perhaps, to give us a rationale behind this demolition by Mr. Sanusi Baturi, who is the CPS to the Kano State governor, joins us from our Kano studio this afternoon. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good afternoon, Kayode. Happy Democracy Day.
Indeed, but I don't know just how happy it will be for those who owned those businesses, those buildings that were demolished. So as maybe a backstory to all of this, we've heard from Senator Kwankwaso, we've heard from former Governor Ganduje, who was not happy, and you heard those words from him while he was briefing pressmen at the presidential villa. What is the rationale really behind the demolition? Did the government give adequate notice to those who own the business? Because some would expect just barely days into a new government, I think mending fences will be the rational thing to do and not breaking down. So what is the rationale behind this?
Well, first of all, the Kano State Governor Engineer Abba Kabir Yusuf has gotten his ticket. Almost a year ago, and during.
Go ahead, please. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Yes. Kano State Governor gotten his ticket to contest election the last 1 year ago, and at the beginning of his campaign activities, he designed a blueprint, and in that blueprint, it was clearly identified that he's going to deal with the issue of land grabbing, and especially in the areas where illegal constructions have taken place. So we used that blueprint to campaign for the elections in 2023, and Alhamdulillah, Kano State people have decided to vote for Engineer Bakabir Yusuf, and he's now the governor. So what is happening at the moment is fulfilling the promises of the campaigns, electioneering campaigns activities. And the reason behind all these things are, one, the places that are undergoing the current demolition are public places that are too important to be left. One is schools. If you take an example of one of the sites that were demolished, is a former Daula Hotel. But it's not a hotel. That hotel has been given to Kano University of Science and Technology, and they have established Center for Continuing Education and Innovative Institute. And in that center, you have over 3,000 students that are running different courses. There are IGMB courses, there are other pre-degree remedial science courses, and then diploma in hospitality management, and some other courses. Over 3,000 students were having lectures there. And 2 years ago, Governor Ganduje took his pen as a governor and ordered the demolition of that university. It's a university campus.
So essentially what you're saying that this action, this recent demolition is sort of tit for tat for what the former governor did. Because he says here that...
It's a reversal.
Okay, well, he said, according to him, he says that this was done without any investigation, without any notice by the current government. So, I mean, if that sort of huge action will take place, there ought to be notice, certainly. In fact, he says that this was done under a PPP arrangement, and this is not good for the optics of the state in terms of investment.
Well, if you're talking about notice, then you're abandoning the executive power, the issue of executive power. Ganduje used the same executive power without giving notice to the university to demolish the place entirely. He demolished the building, the university building entirely, and relocated the students, and then established another business. And this business is just hiding the cover of under PPP, but is given to the first family. It's given to the first family. We have all the documents. You understand? We are in charge of Kano. Engineer Bakabir Yusuf is not the governor, and he has access to any relevant information that he requires at any given time. And if you're talking about notice, there have been informal notice during the campaign activities, and then in the blueprint, and then during the transition period, we issued an advisory, a public advisory, saying that anybody conducting or making construction in any public place should stop. And a lot of people decided not to stop. So therefore, we're now at the helm of the affairs of Kano State government, and we have to do the right thing.
Well, the propriety just the propriety, pardon me, of that notice, I mean, is quite doubtful. If you say they were given during campaigns, I mean, elections had not even been held, so he didn't even know he was going to be governor. Even if you say he was given during the transition period, it still wasn't governor then. So this was done just days after he became governor, after he got that executive power which you referred to. So, I mean, is that still a point to make when clearly he was not governor then?
Well, with or without notice, those places are empty. So there's no anybody living there or anybody conducting any business, at least the first two places that were demolished at the beginning, at the very beginning of this exercise. And probably because of the public outcry, His Excellency has appointed a new managing director for Kano Urban Planning Board, which has been has mobilized his team, and that are going to give that notice that you are referring to. So we're now giving notice, but at the
so this is sort of like medicine after death. Mr. Bature, but we have to wind down now, and I appreciate the insight you're giving Nigerians so they understand what exactly is going on. But speak to this in less than a minute. What is the government doing to ensure that this does not degenerate further? Because the former governor was saying that there's a possibility that this might end up to being, religious or tribal conflict.
Well, there will be no any religious or tribal conflicts. One, because if you misuse places of worship and then those places are given the right decision to actually be reclaimed, like the central Eid ground, which has been there for hundreds of years. It has been sold out partly, and we're trying to reclaim it for security reasons at will. And then in other places, when you look at the businesses, it's about safety of people. Those buildings were illegally constructed without even permission of the Urban Planning Authority, and then the structures doesn't really look. If you look at the demolition, as soon as the grader hit them, they just fell down because they were so substandard. So we are careful about the safety of people that might be using those places as well, apart from being constructed in.
We have to anchor at this point, really, but would like to thank you so much for speaking to us on this. Clearly, we'll still be speaking to you in the coming days. Mr. Sanusi Bature is a CPS, as a Chief Press Secretary to the Kano State Governor. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kairi.
Well, that's been the package for today. Don't forget, we have a full package for you on Channels Television today, plus what is going on across the states. So stay here with us. I'm Kairi Pikulu.